Chapter 17. Howling Heights. The Howling Heights stone surface served as Solomon's first bed. The rough sand atop the rock bed served as his pillow. He, along with the other prisoners, huddled together for warmth in the bitter cold night. Upon arriving, the golden bird had unceremoniously dropped Solomon atop the high rock formation. He'd crashed into one of the other prisoners atop the rock, who swore madly at him and almost threw him off the edge. Solomon knew he was up perilously high by the sense of vertigo he got near the edge, even in the darkened night. He'd found the other people atop the Howling Heights unwelcoming to his presence, not responding to his questions of where he was or why they were there. He decided to curl up into a ball and try and sleep when a sudden weight fell on top of him. The air was knocked out of him, and a flurry of curses rang from the figure that landed on him. "You filthy flying rat," said a nasally male voice. "Tell the order I'll expect an apology for mistreatment." Solomon wheezed and drew in deep breaths, the figure turning to Solomon in the dark. "Sorry about that. Fat bird dropped me right on ya. You okay there?" he asked. "I think so," replied Solomon, with a gasp through his beak. "Come on, let's huddle up with the others," he said, placing a hand on Kobe's forearm and lifting him off the ground. "Make way, you bastards," he swore at the huddle group and shoved Solomon down amongst the other prisoners. "Back again, hey, Daff?" said one of the prisoners. "My old friend Neri," replied Daff. "Yep, I couldn't leave you alone, could I? Not on the eve of the Sunball tourney." "What did you do this time?" asked Neri. "Scalping tickets, mate." "Order picked up my trail," replied Daff. "Shouldn't have gone for the encrypted kind. Stiffed me out." "Selling tickets to a sold-out tournament is a stupid idea," said one of the other prisoners. "You want to come and say that to my face?" said Daff angrily. "I didn't ask you, mate." "Calm down, Daff," said Neri. "It is a stupid idea," he teased. "Not when the out-of-towners think they've got the last few spots, they don't," countered Daff. "I'm not going to let willing customers part with their money just because something doesn't actually exist." As Daff spoke, Solomon remembered the scalpers that came out when the PMF was on. They'd always been roaming around the prison music festival grounds or on the forums, trying to sell exorbitantly high tickets, and mostly they were counterfeit. "Do you have any morals, Daff?" said Neri with a chuckle. "Not if there is some cheddar to be made. Besides, if they're buying from me, it says more about them. They're the ones with no morals," countered Daff with a laugh. "Quiet, you two. We're trying to sleep," said another prisoner with a gruff voice. All right," said Daff. "Nighty-night, little birdies." The prisoners responded in gruff tones, laughter, or muttered curses. Solomon found himself smiling at Daff's cheek. Warm and surrounded, he drifted off to sleep, pressed against Daff and an unknown stranger beside him. "Get up," said a voice in Solomon's ear. Solomon stirred, thinking he was still dreaming. "Come on and get up, or else you'll miss out on brekkie," said a familiar voice. Solomon opened his eyes to see a young blond-haired man watching him. He had no beak, or any discernible bird-like appearance. A pair of green, mischievous eyes glinted back at him, and a toothy smile. "The fat bird's come early," said Daff. "Figured I'd repay you for landing on you. What's your name?" he asked. "Solomon," he replied, slowly waking up. He glanced around and saw the sun was slowly breaking on the horizon. "What time is it?" asked Solomon. "Dawn time," replied Daff. "Can't you see the sun?" "Of course I can. I meant the hour," he replied, a little frustrated. Now," said Daff. "No need for the tone." "I couldn't tell you the time, mate. Hard to tell, you know," he said with a smile. Solomon was about to reply when Daff pointed to the sky. "There they are, bringing the goods now." Solomon gazed and saw two giant birds with rounded satchels in their talons approaching like storks carrying babies. They approached quickly and dropped the yellow bundles atop the rocky floor near where they stood. "Quickly now," said Daff, unlacing the rope that held them, "before the others wake up." Daff opened the sachet to reveal breads, cheeses, and bottles of yellow liquid. Solomon realized how hungry he was, and along with Daff he ate quickly and filled his grumbling stomach. The other prisoners began to stir and joined in on the feast, quickly becoming an elbow fest, which Solomon and Daff moved back away from and watched as the prisoners began fighting over the food. "Thanks," said Solomon. "Don't mention it," replied Daff. "Hey, I never asked. What are you in for?" "I flew too close to the edge," said Solomon. "Why'd you do that?" "You know that's Ryenhart's most prized possession, right?" So I found out, countered Solomon. He didn't want to tell Daff that he'd intended to take it. I'm not from Ryenhart, admitted Solomon. I can see that, replied Daff. You must have gone to the cheapest cosmetic dealer you could find, he said, inspecting Solomon with an expression of disdain. Hey, snapped Solomon, it's not cheap, though he wasn't actually sure what it had cost. He turned to Daff. You can talk. You haven't got any cosmetics at all. Daff pointed to his hair. Pure blonde genetics, mate. Not many can claim that. Besides, I'm not one of them bird brains like the rest. I'm pure Reinhardtian. He thumped his chest. Purer than what Ryenhart has turned into. You see all these people? He gestured, turning to the mob of prisoners. Solomon looked and saw the collection of men. What about them? Asked Solomon. Do you see any birds? Any feathers? Or beaks? Solomon studied them, and was surprised he'd not noticed it before. None of the other prisoners had any markings of birds at all. Daff caught his eyes. None of 'em. Know why? Because they're the workers, the ones who hold Ryenhart together, while the rest of them swan about, pretending everything is perfect and their nests can be lined with gold. But no gold ever came out of the ground itself. Who do you think does that? Solomon did not need to answer. Now you're picking it up, said Daff, studying his face. The working class. We are looked down on by the birds who do nothing to contribute to our lives while we work day and night, unpaid, unsupported, and ignored. Then what happens if we step out of line and challenge the system, eh? He gestured to all around him. Welcome to Ryenhart, mate, said Daff, where the fat birds do nothing and the thin, starving people do everything. If there's any question of how things work, this is where we end up. He gestured around himself once more. The heights. We step out of line, we try and get ahead, we try and earn a crust, or God forbid, a ticket to the Sunball tourney, and this is where we end up. Solomon saw Daff and the others in a different light. The prisoners gathered all around them. Their despondency was written on their faces, a downtrodden sense of existence. Solomon saw they were a mix of different colored eyes and hair, like a normal group of people back on Earth. They all seemed to stare back at him with a mixture of anger and fear, like they wanted to throw him off the cliff, but wouldn't go down near him. Daff gave Solomon a nudge, breaking him out of his train of thought. Don't worry, mate. They won't hurt you. They know you're really not a bird. Besides, you seem all right by me, strange as you are. You're not from here, right? Whereabouts? He asked. Solomon decided to try his luck with some honesty. I'm from LA. Never heard of it, replied Daff. Is that off the coast somewhere? Yeah, you could say that, replied Solomon. So, how long you in for? He asked. I'm not sure. The bird said something to me via my mind link. You've got one of those, eh? Lucky for some, said Daff. Implants are reserved for the upper class. If they didn't serve you on the spot, the countdown will be in your head. The other fellows who've got implants tell the others how long they've got left in their heads, or some such. See if it's there. Solomon connected with his mind link and found a new piece of information within, something he'd not seen before. It was from the city of Ryenhart, issuing him a letter of imprisonment with a countdown timer for when his sentence was to be for. It says I've only got a few hours left, said Solomon, elated. Lucky for some, responded Neri from the side. Most of us will be here for years, he said solemnly. Solomon felt a pang of shame at his excitement and suddenly remembered his father. Solomon had told no one about him. He'd gone in and out of prison all through his life, how he and his mother had visited him while he was incarcerated, only for him to be welcome home and fall into trouble once again. He'd grown to hate his father and his trouble with drugs and lifestyle. It had made Solomon escape his environment in search of a different life, a life without identifying with gangs. Yet here were men just like his father, perhaps rightfully punished, perhaps wrongfully, yet stuck in a system that did not support them or help them integrate into society outside of what others had deemed it to be. Few hours, huh? Said Daff, breaking his thoughts. Well, you'll get a good look at the grave from up here, as much as an eyesore as it is. Daff pointed to a swirling mass of grey clouds in the distance that clung to the ground. It seemed oppressive and unwelcoming, even from a distance. What is that? Said Solomon. The grey, like I said, replied Daff. Been there forever. Horrible thing. People don't go near it, or it kills you as soon as you touch it or breathe in the fumes. On bad days you can smell it, if the wind is blowing strong enough. Smells like the bottom of a cockatoo's cage, he finished with a laugh. Solomon viewed the swirling vortex, the range of grey hues lashing and twisting around one another, making it a foreboding sight. He thought he saw a flash of something glimmering inside it, and asked Daff what it was. Nothing in there, mate, he replied. Only madness and death. If the birds drop you off in there, it's curtains, mate. No one comes back from that place, he said ominously. Wasn't Ashley wearing grey? Solomon thought to himself. Surely Abe wouldn't have sent him into that. The sound of wings caught their attention away from the grey to see two giant golden birds approaching. They appeared like eagles to Solomon, majestic and intimidating. They landed atop the rocky surface, sharp claws digging into the ground. A voice spoke in Solomon's mind link. You are to come back to the citadel. His Holiness wishes to meet you, it said briefly. Daff nudged Solomon. What's he saying? Solomon relayed the message. His Holiness wants to meet you? Daff said, amazed. He is to come with us also. A sacrifice before the Sunball tournament, said the voice in Solomon's mind. Solomon gasped, eyes going to Daff. What? What did he say? Daff asked. Solomon did not know the words, his throat going dry as he relayed the message. Daff took a deep breath, his gaze focused on the ground. All we can do is smile back, he said cryptically, peering up at the giant bird.